We're talking with Crappie T here in a minute, but a few things to clear up first. Like I said before with the live stream we did with Randy, I thought this is a pretty fun format. I think this is pretty cool, whether it's live or if it's recorded. YouTube did release a podcasting feature now, so that might be something that I do more of, whether it's live or recorded. I'm not entirely sure. The live thing has benefits, the recorded thing has benefits. We'll see if I take advantage of that, but it could be something cool to do, especially for the winter, or like right now, early spring, when the snow and the ice is still covering the lake. So gears are turning in my head. We'll see what we do with that. But as far as actually fishing, like I said, there's a lot of snow and ice out on Sakakawea right now. It could be a while until I get out there. Don't know what's going to happen. We're playing it by ear, day by day. What else? If you haven't checked out Patreon yet, I appreciate all the people that have become a member of Patreon, help to support this channel. We switched some things up this year a little bit. The fishing reports are still going to be on. Everything's the same there, but we did add another tier with some different services. So that could be something that you could check out. All the links for that sort of stuff is in the description of this video. So think about that. Check that out later. Maybe now, maybe by the end of this thing, you'll go, oh, this is cool. This is worth supporting. Maybe then you'll feel like it. Maybe you'll feel like it in a week from now. Maybe you'll feel like it when the fishing season starts and you want some fishing reports to get you the inside scoop on what's going on Lake Sakakawea. Either way, thanks for joining us. I'm going to bring in Crappie T here in a second. But one thing you need to know before we bring Crappie T on is that he is quite the trash talker. So I don't want him dominating my live stream, okay? I want to set the tone right out the gate. And you're going to be in on this. You got my back, right? I'm going to hit him with a little something right after we bring him on. Just warning you. All right, let's see what he's up to. Crappie T.
Bloom, that was quite the intro. Not quite the way I was envisioning it.
You can see the intro? Now you know what I'm playing in?
I know what you're playing in. I see what you're stepping in, but happy
I
to
gotta
be
learn
here.
what things I can do on here and what things I can't. I thought you were in the dark, man. Either way.
Last year was a dead year. Every time my video guy that kind of fishes with me and does the videos, he does a really good job. We'd get out there, we'd start drilling hogs, and we couldn't bring the camera out. And I thought, I told him like 10 times, we got to shoot some video. Didn't work. And then tournament season started and totally didn't work. Might throw the camera in actually this year and just see what happens. Can't be bad, but yeah, I'm ready. Good. I hate winter.
I'm just glad you're on the live stream, because after you totally punked out of our last rematch in the fall, I thought maybe you get stage fright, maybe you wouldn't show up. I'm just glad to see you here. That's all I got to say.
All right, so here's the deal. Seeing how you brought up the rematch right out of the gate, there will be a rematch this year with a little caveat to go with it. Okay. Here's the caveat. Everybody that's watching, all 9 of you, drop a comment, good, bad, ugly, whatever, during this cast.
Just be honest.
And you will get put into the hat. What the hat is, at some point in time in this year, me and Dr. Bloom are going to go mano a mano on the big Sakakawea, which he obviously has the huge advantage. But when you got skill, you got skill. So I'm going to win. No big deal. Anyway, we'll have a derby, most fish in the mouth, in the boat, that thing where they get off at the side of the boat and you say that counts, that doesn't count. Anyway, if I win, which is imminent, you will donate a day's fishing trip to somebody who gave a comment. You'll just pull a name out of the hat.
Okay.
If lightning strikes, which it never does twice, and you win, I pay you for a guided trip. You pull a name out of the hat and take that person fishing on me.
Well, I like the second part better.
You like the second part better. Deal or no deal, just like Howie Mandel says.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
You're on.
So the bottom line is, drop a comment. You might get the bounty of Bloom.
So we talking comments in the live stream or comments on the YouTube or both? Do whatever. We'll scrape through it all.
You're the one
Make
that
sure we don't
scrapes
miss
through it
anything.
all, and
I'll scrape through it all.
you scrape through it all. Drop a comment somewhere, and it'll go into the kitty.
Okay. Well, that's quite the curveball to start this thing off with. I appreciate that.
Well, I was thinking the other day, I thought, I know he's going to bring up the rematch because it didn't happen in the 2022 year. And I'm ready, more than ready. Pretty much know I'm going to win. So what do I got to lose?
Well, we got a name in the hat. We got Rick Schmidt. How about this though? How about, okay, either way, if I'm going to take somebody out for a free chip, should I happen to lose, which is not going to happen, they have to make a video with me so we can video the whole thing. So it's like a big,
there you go.
We got the crappie rematch, and then we got the, here's the client that got a fish as a result of crappie's loss.
Excellent idea. Excellent idea. Done. I'm in.
Okay.
I'm in. I'm thinking it'll be in October, but I don't know. Who knows? But
okay.
I hope the weather is inclement. We don't have to worry about the wind. Sakakawea. It's going to be windy.
It's never windy up there. No.
It's going to be windy. So all that'll play into I just know not to fish jigging wraps directly below the boat when you say they're right below us. Those fish don't bite.
Some days they do. Some days they do. But I was throwing you off the scent a little bit because I knew they weren't biting under the boat.
That was.
Yeah, why don't you drop it down on this fish? I'll catch the one out here.
Exactly. Well, you pitch it off to the side and they only bit casting, but anyway, you live and learn, kind of like the tournament season last year. I liked it, learned a lot, a ton, so much, made my head spin. I learned with that deal too, so we're gonna roll with it.
Well, that's a good segue, actually. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, not in order, but you started fishing. Well, I don't know if started is the right term, but you escalated your tournament fishing last year.
Escalated, joined AIM Weekend Walleye Series in Minnesota. Okay. Did a bunch of those. The FM Walleye Club has some tournaments. Did 2 of the 3 of those. Had a ball. Learned a ton. Get to see all the high-end people that make videos like you at these tournaments. You know, John Hoyer's there. Give me a break. I wanted to just chase him around the lake, but the guy that I was fishing with, it's like, no, we're not fishing boats. We're fishing fish. Let him go. But, you know, I don't have all the inside intel that a lot of these big gunners do. And I thought, hey, might work to get a feel for what the pros know. But gained a lot of information. It was a ball. Loved it. Totally all in. Most fun fishing that I've almost ever had. Got head over heels with Garmin Live Scope. I'm not into the trolling thing anymore. The old 2090 doesn't even need a Vantage really anymore, because unless I'm fishing for a walleye dinner on a small lake in Minnesota, everything is chase them, see them, throw to them, and catch them. Love it.
Yeah. So for people that are on the fence thinking about, do I really need to spend, say, $2,500 or $3,000 on live imaging? You've used it a lot. I've used it very little so far. Why? What's the selling point? What would make a person put that money down for something like that?
So like you, I generally in the past would cruise around, be it perch, walleyes, even crappies like last weekend, just roll side imaging. Walleyes especially, as long as they're not in thick rock, show up pretty darn good on side imaging, and that gives you a pretty darn good idea of, you know, where they're at. and we'd fish those. Now we use that in conjunction with spin around on them, hit them with live imaging, and just to watch fish interact, I saw things that I never envisioned in a million years, like a fish race towards your bait, get within a foot, and take off.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that time and time again. And then so go ahead, you know, scroll ahead 1 minute after you thought, gee, they must not have liked that bait. Let's say you were throwing a jig and minnow. You throw a jig and leech in there and they inhale it on the next one. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you learned a bunch right there.
Mm-hmm.
At this very point in time, the minnow thing was off, or, different color plastic you might have on.
Sure.
You're on Mille Lacs Lake and you're throwing, shiner based plastics and they won't touch it. All of a sudden you put some big blue curly tail on there and they're just whacking it. Why? I don't know. But I learned so much about fish behavior. It was just
Mm-hmm.
dumb. I had never experienced that before. And the fact, even when you side image some fish, we all have an idea, you kind of look at the marks. Oh, there's 4, 5, 6 marks there. You spin around on them and you kind of scan that whole area.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, well, no, there wasn't 5 or 6. There was 26. They just weren't right there.
Mm-hmm.
Or, especially if you're in the rocks, like on leech, all of a sudden you'll be looking at something and all of a sudden something will appear. Many times that's a hog. That means get it on him.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the, with live imaging the way it is now, I mean, at 60 feet, I can see an 1/8 ounce jig hit the water and fall right to him.
Sure.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I never would have thought that. So it's kind of revolutionized the way we go at things.
Mm-hmm.
Always fishing at a fish.
Yep.
If there's nothing there, I'm out. I'm searching.
Yep.
Hoping.
Yeah. So I guess my thought is, me personally, I've been hesitant on it a little bit because when I fish at Lake Sakakawea, we have, first of all, we're blessed to have so many freaking walleyes in that system. So you're fishing really big schools a lot of times, especially in the peak periods of the season. You can see, 20, 30, 40, 100 fish on side imaging, and you're like, okay, I know there's plenty of fish here. I don't need any of that stuff. However, like you said, if for some reason they're not reacting to what you're throwing, that's something that you can't get out of side imaging. You don't know how the fish are reacting to the bait. But also, I think if you were fishing tournaments, like you can see fish on side imaging and you can tell the sizes of the fish and that kind of stuff. But if you're specifically looking to cast at an exact fish that you're looking for a tournament and you think you can identify a bigger walleye, that's probably giving you, because you, like you said, you can see your lure when you cast it on the active target. That's crazy to me. So side imaging, you're never going to see your lure. You can see it on sonar below the boat if you get right below the transducer, but not when you're casting. So I think it could be really big for tournaments. It's obviously good for ice fishing. So if you're sitting stagnant in one hole and you're trying to do everything you can do to find, mark, and catch a fish, I think it's great for ice fishing. If you're an ice fisherman that's got some extra money, you should absolutely get something like this. I'm assuming at some point the price is going to come down. It's going to become more standard. I don't think I'm going to get it next year. I know Randy's got one. We talked about it last time. I might play around with Randy's, but we'll see how it goes. Well,
the day you go out with Randy and you pan around and see what you're missing, that'll be a life-changing day for you, because you'll have thought, didn't see anything on side imaging. All of a sudden there'll be some big glowing marks off the bottom. And I think mega side imaging with Humminbird is the best side imaging there is. And I think it works great.
Yeah.
Especially on our perch here. I mean, whenever the ice eventually does leave, probably in a month, it's a great tool to see a lot of them. They're in shallow water. Those perch are just like walleyes, shallow to deep as the year goes on. And side imaging is all I've ever used. Last year, I still used side imaging a ton, but just to humor myself, because I had live imaging sitting right there, I'd drop it down. And it was cool. Amazingly, you'd think a perch is a perch. They're easy to catch. They'll eat anything. Well, these hogs, they really won't eat anything. There was tons of times where I'd toss it right on them
Hmm.
and they bolt. And I would have never thought that in a million years. I thought perch
Yeah.
were always hungry, they're panfish, and never ending appetite, but I was wrong.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, but I want to set this up a little bit. We jumped right into things because we were talking about this rematch. I want people to know, first of all, where you come from, where you fish. You're a dentist from Idaho, a country dentist from Idaho. You fish
Country.
Cascade Lake in Idaho for massive perch. And also for the other people, if anybody is just joining, Crappie T did volunteer my services for a potential free fishing trip. So if you do want a chance at a free fishing trip, you need to comment here on the live stream or on the YouTube video. And yeah, so why don't you tell us about Cascade Lake perch for the few people that have not heard about the mutant perch of Cascade Lake yet?
Basically, everybody at this point, if they're involved in fishing, I mean, guys I talk to and at these Minnesota tournaments, they I tell them, you know, I'm from Idaho, and the first thing they bring up is, "You ever fish Cascade?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a cabin there, and I fished it when 20 years ago when the perch fishing was no good. Too many predators, water quality problems, lots of stuff. They reintroduced the perch. Basically, it's a food factory, so they have just exploded. Super fun.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, many times of the year they're very bitey. If you know how to fish for them and you're a little versatile, like I don't think I bought a box of worms last year. I don't use live bait. I mean, will perch bite a night crawler? Well, yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but you tend to catch a lot smaller fish. There'll be people out there. Well, nobody from Idaho is probably watching this, so it doesn't matter. But
Mm-hmm.
most people do use worms, and they work. They work, guaranteed. But if you get, you know, the big bait, big fish thing is
Mm-hmm.
truly the case. You know, I never thought I'd be fishing perch with a number 9 jigging wrap.
Right. So that's the other question that I really wanted to ask you, is because not only do you catch the biggest perch I've ever seen in my 3D life, like regularly 16, 17-inch perch on Cascade Lake, you do it a lot of different ways. You're always sending me videos. It's almost like you take it as a personal challenge. Like, can I catch a perch on this? Let's see if I can.
Well, basically, I kind of looked at it like, you know, they are part of the um, walleye family,
Mm-hmm.
and because if I could fish for walleyes, I wouldn't fish for perch. But we've got only a couple walleye lakes here, other than if you go to the Columbia, which I'd love to do more.
Who wouldn't?
So you fish for what you got. Anyway, I kind of took a lot of the walleye tactics and thought, I bet they'd work for perch. And especially in the summer months when they scatter, they go a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of weeds, you know, there's always fish in the weeds. That's one of the biggest takeaways I got last year. I mean, I never dreamed that in August I'd be fishing a 9-foot weed edge and there was hog walleyes loaded on it. I mean,
Sure.
I always thought everything was deep. You needed to go mid-lake humps, all this stuff. Same thing in Cascade. Weed edges are good. They pull out. It's when they pull out, that's when you bring out the lead and you hit them with the lead. And I really enjoy that. I use live scope a lot for that. Sometimes I'll just cruise around with the big motor, see a mark on sonar, drop behind the boat about where I thought it might have been. Many times one snap on. Super fun. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a hog. It's a hog when they're out roaming. The little fish will hang around the weeds because they don't want
Mm-hmm.
to get eaten by other stuff like
Right.
squawfish or whatever,
Right.
or other big perch, you know, because we find perch eat perch, you know, walleyes eat walleyes. Same thing. So yeah, I like trying, you know, jigging spoons, um, all kinds of stuff, and it works. You know,
I hate. I don't
took a
mean to
bath.
interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you got to look at Mike Sherrard's comment here. He says he fishes with you all the time. He wants to be in the hat though, because he'd rather fish with me so we can get some quiet fishing time versus you yapping.
Well, that's kind of the way it goes. Once I get going, it's like mouth diarrhea, I
Which
guess.
makes it good for a live stream. Also, Brian Hanstead wanted to know why you're not coming in September. Why is it October?
Well, in September, Henstead's the guy you took fishing.
Yeah, I remember you, Brian.
I bought him a trip for Christmas. Him and his wife and I teamed up and bought him a trip for Christmas, and he went out there with Paul. Anyway, I don't know that I'm going to come to North Dakota in September because of timing. I might. Calm down, Hanstead. It might happen. I don't know. But I got tournaments. There is a tournament on, can't remember the lake, getting too wound up.
A lake in North America?
A lake in
With
Minnesota,
walleyes?
an hour east of Fargo. We had one of our best finishes there last year. Crystal clear water. Live scoped the tar out of them. We got 17th. We beat a lot. Everybody was a local. I'd never fished there until 2 days prior. I felt accomplished.
Nice.
Anyway,
I
don't know what I was talking about before that, but it was good.
It was good. I don't remember why I interrupted you. I know you were mentioning something. Okay, so here's what I wanted to follow up on. You said that oddly enough, the bigger perch are the harder ones to catch, the more picky biters. So probably take something different to catch them. That's probably true with a lot of fish. It's harder to catch bigger walleyes. Is it because there's fewer numbers of them, or because they literally are pickier, smarter, whatever it is? What's your take on why it's harder to get those perch to bite, and what do you do to get the bigger perch?
What you do is use big baits and have to cover ground. In the mornings for first light, you can kind of get them on the weed lines and you just notice the fish disappear. And not all of them, some of them stay there, but like your 10-inch perch stay there maybe all day, but you get kind of tired of catching those. So I'll start kind of roaming. I think why it's harder to catch the big ones is they've eaten in the morning from daylight for the next hour and a half, and they just go out and kind of cruise. And so the big fish, of which there is a ton, last fall we had some days, a friend of mine and I, where, I don't know, fish over 14 inches, him and I probably caught in 4 hours over 100.
Jeez.
And so I know that they exist, but use weird stuff sometimes. Like the craziest thing, I'll take a 8-inch plastic worm. You seen where bass fishermen take that little rubber band thing?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that's called. Put it right in the middle and just put your hook through it. So I'll flip that out like maybe in less than 10 feet of water, and it sinks real slowly. You have to use a sinking plastic worm. And I mean, they'll bite it. A plastic worm that long.
Holy crap.
So pretty cool,
Yeah.
when you don't use, I toy with all kinds of stuff just because there's something, the fish are going to bite on something all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Fair
I think.
enough.
Yeah.
I would agree most of the time. I think there are times where fish are just off, but you can usually trigger a few bites if you figure out something different, whether it's walleyes, perch, or crappies. And we probably should at least touch on crappies because that is your nickname after all. So I know more about your perch fishing because of where you live, but I don't even know where do you catch crappies? And let's start with that. Where do you fish crappies?
Basically, it's on the Snake River system. We went last weekend, just an hour away from Boise. The Snake River, as many people know, travels almost all the way through the state, or a long ways through the state, and in many different areas, CJ Strike Reservoir, Brownlee Reservoir, Oxbow Reservoir, there's crappies. Just so happens we've been going to one of them lately, and wintertime, just like that Kansas Angling Adventures guy shows, wintertime crappie, they get really schooled up. They're deep. It's fun. And it's something to do, right? I mean, we get a lot of usually mediocre weather where, February, even January, February, March, you might get a day where it's going to be not windy and a reasonable temperature, 40 or up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's open water. There's not a lot of opportunities for that time of the year. So we go. And a few years ago, we were going heavy. We got a really nice weather stretch, and we were catching just tons of 12, 13, 14-inch crappies. And just to kind of, as you know, when I'm fishing with, or basically it's against someone else in my boat, we turn it into a competition. And I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Crappie T at one point, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think my friend Fred, his wife, made me a T-shirt, and my other friends, Dave, he made me a T-shirt. It just kind of had a catchy thing, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of stuck, and whatever. There's Hanstead again.
Mm-hmm.
You tell us how to catch pike. Well, he's aiming that at me because I think that they're trash fish like trout. I don't fish for trout in this state. I hate them. And I've caught enough northerns in my life. I can't stand northerns. And
Yeah.
Brian Hanstead and his family, I love them.
Here's how to catch a pike. Find a pike and put a bait in its face. End of story. That's all you got to do.
Perfect answer for Hanstead. No, anyway, so we do a lot of crappie fishing. It's not a secret that Brownlee Reservoir, which is a reservoir on the Snake River, is very popular for crappie cycles. When it's on a great cycle, it's super fun. When it's on the 7-inch crappie cycle, it's still fun, but after you've caught 100 7-inch crappies,
right,
kind of starts to wear off. So anyway, that's how the crappie thing kind of started rolling. And
yeah. So I haven't fished crappies a lot in my life, rarely targeting them. It's usually an incidental catch, trying to fish for something else like walleyes. I've caught probably more crappies than anything ice fishing Clear Lake. So for somebody who's just kind of, I don't know, getting into, or just a fun angling crappie chaser, I would assume that, like walleyes, there's probably a time in the beginning of the season, spring and early summer, where they're really easy to find. They're school up heavy. They're really hungry. Everybody's catching them. And then things get tougher. How do you catch those crappies when things get tougher? And when does it get tougher?
I would say when it gets tougher here kind of is when the water gets warmer. Winter, if you use your brain and realize that crappies are a lot of times, I mean, we're fishing in 40 to 60 feet of water.
Mm-hmm.
And the crappies, you'll be able to see them just on simple sonar at like 40 feet. Well, most people in this state, they use 2 crappie jigs, 2, 3 feet apart, and they cast out and try to bring them through them. That never made any sense to me. So I use a different method. Everybody that's ever seen me out there, I've showed them what I use. I just put a weight on there with it and get it down, and I just fish it right to them. If you know the fish are right there, then just fish them right there. There's no need to cast. Casting is something you do if they're spooky and they're away from you, which these fish kind of have been spooky.
Mm-hmm.
So we may have to change our tactics, slip bobber, whatever. Fish all seem to be at 30 feet. If you got to cast to them, pretty hard to do, knowing your fish are in the bait. If you're casting 2 16th-ounce jigs in 60 feet of water and the fish are at 30 feet, if you're casting that, you're only going to be in them for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And you might have got to 30 feet after or before the fish.
Mm-hmm.
I like to fish them straight down. It's effective. Early when the water warms up, the fish will move onto the shorelines just like ever. Like in Minnesota, they move into the bulrushes and the cabbage and spawn. Mm-hmm. Blah, blah, blah. That happens here too. But I really don't have a lot of experience after that, because once Cascades open, I'd rather go fish for perch.
Mm-hmm.
And our walleye lakes, which have a couple around here, we'll go do that. So we kind of just, over the winter time, get crappie burnout, if that's a real thing. And so we don't do it anymore.
Sure.
So I'm not too diehard of a crappie angler. I do it when that's all we can do. and I really like it, but
Mm-hmm.
temporary.
Gotcha.
Temporary.
Well, and didn't you grow up on Lake Sakakawea, by the way?
Grew up in Minot. My parents had a cabin all of my growing up years, 3 west, 3 south of Garrison.
Okay.
So just east of Douglas Bay, probably 2 miles. From that cabin site to Douglas Bay was about how far they'd let me go. I had a 14-foot aluminum dinghy with a 7.5 Merc and a little trolling motor and a Furuno depth finder.
What?
And it was a little company called, I don't know, it came on sale at Shields for like $59. I drug my dad down there, used my lawn mowing money, got my depth finder, and I was like, I'm going to slaughter them. And even for that primitive stuff, like you, I was out there all the time, could follow the fish around. Caught a lot. We had a good time. So that's kind of where I grew up, the end of Sakakawea that you fished the most. I was never allowed to go there, not in a million years, until I went and visited Hansted. Was the first time I'd ever been to Skunk Bay, McKenzie Bay, all that stuff. And the amount of fish that I was seeing on the graphs there, I mean, not that I've been back to my home end of the lake forever, but I was overly impressed. I mean, the 2 days we were out, I was like, oh my God, this is walleye fishing. This is the Mecca, I mean, fish, fish, fish. I mean, there was not very much time that goes by on Sakakawea where we were a blank screen.
Right.
And
yeah, there's been a lot of discussion too about that. Since I'm based in Garrison, the discussion is always east versus west, which is kind of a misnomer because even the area you're talking about is still the east half of the lake, but it's further west than Garrison. So like the east end can have plenty of good fishing too. And it just, for whatever reason, the last couple of years, the numbers just seem to be down, and the game and fish has been stocking that end with walleyes because the numbers are down. So at some point that'll come up and be a little bit better too, I would imagine. But yeah, like you said, when you get into that deep water bay near the river, near Van Hook sort of junction of the lake, there's a lot of areas that draw fish, and that, there's a lot of reasons for them to be there. So if things are tougher on the east side, it's definitely worth the drive to get that far out to go catch those fish. I would agree.
I was totally shocked. I mean, I watch all your videos, and most days, you guys are catching them pretty darn good. Every once in a while, there's a tough day. The wind's blowing 900 miles an hour, and you're stuck in, Fort Stevenson Bay or whatever, or Deepwater Bay. You just can't go anywhere unless you had a ship. So, and even then, you still scratch out, in a limited amount of time, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 walleyes. I mean, that's not bad for a tough day. And then when you go to the spots that are, wind blown from the day before, the next day, you guys smash them.
Yeah, Sakakawea is definitely an opportunistic lake because of the wind. There's days where you got to take what you can get, and then when the wind is, you don't want it to be flat calm either, but when the wind is blowing but not forcing your hand, go take advantage, fish that windswept stuff, and clean up. It can be, I've had guys for guided trips where it's like we have 2 days, and after the first day it was blowing 30 mile an hour, we're stuck in the bay, and they're super dejected about their experience. I'm like, just wait till tomorrow, it'll be fine. And it is usually.
My tactic that I'm going to employ when we before we have our derby, I'm going to call the Nodak angler and get a couple hot tips on baits, just because I know that guy's got your number. I never saw anybody walleye fishing take a beating as bad as you did that day. I bet you had like a boil on your hand from holding the net.
Yeah, that's the most anybody's ever kicked my butt in my boat.
Oh,
for sure.
I mean, I watch that guy's videos too. I watch everything. I'm just crazy about all of it, be it on Lake of the Woods, Lake Sakakawea, whatever.
Yep.
That's where you get a lot of ideas. I'm not watching watching
Mm-hmm.
those videos, like to see somebody. The takeaway I got
Yep.
is I fished with you, and I kind of know your comfort zone of baits in that time of the year. Well, he put on a bait that you and I never even tried, that
Mm-hmm.
blue jigging wrap,
Yep.
and it was it was a catch fest. So anyway,
Mhm.
I'll be talking to that guy.
Yeah. For those of you that don't get the reference, Justin Vollmer's his name. He runs the Nodak Angler Fishing Forum. He also has a YouTube channel, Nodak Angler. So we partnered up to do a video last year. It was September 20th ish. And I think the video's on the channel. It's called something like Crazy Hot Early Fall Bite or something like that. And I caught my share of fish, but he caught way more and much bigger fish. And he was using the Blue Tiger jigging wrap. And I think he was also using a slightly different cadence than I was using. I think he was fishing it a little easier, a little slower. And it was one of the craziest days of walleye fishing I've ever seen from anybody. The number of fish that guy caught over 20 inches that day was incredible.
No, I was literally shocked. I'd never seen that volume of jigging wrap fish at that mid-September time is kind of a transition. That's when I was there. The
Right.
fish like kind of done with the summer thing, not really into the fall thing. They're just kind of there. And I mean, I saw when we were out there, those guys dragging around a Lindy rig and a crawler, caught a few.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was people still trolling spinners, getting a few. Lots of people dropping jigging wraps down, but not a ton of catching
Yep.
going on, except for Justin Vollmer, the Nodak angler. He put he put on a clinic. That was
Yeah.
impressive. That was cool to see. In
Mm-hmm.
that it kind of it lets you know, you got a chance. It's
Uh-huh.
just they're just not biting. They just maybe aren't biting what I've got. I mean,
Yep.
everybody. I don't know. You kind of get it in your brain how to fish a bait, be it a jig, a jigging wrap, a ripping wrap, which that's the idea that I would like to see you do. Put out a video on ripping
Mhm.
wraps. It's going to be, let's put it this way. There's 20 inches of ice on Sakakawea. Whenever you can get out there, the water's going to be cold for a long time.
Yep.
Well, there's thousands of videos coming out of Green Bay where the water's cold, in the Fox River and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. The water's cold there. They're
Mm-hmm.
using ripping wraps, and you see guys just smashing hogs
Mm-hmm.
routinely.
Yep.
And I watched an NWT event once where there was a guy that did very well, and he was using ripping wraps. Anyway,
Yep.
idea one, make a ripping wrap video this year. Kind of like when I sent you those jigging spoons and you made a
Mm-hmm.
video. You caught a few. Try a ripping wrap one day.
Yeah. So
See what goes.
in all honesty, I've tried to make a ripping wrap video 3 times on Lake Sakakawea, and it's never panned out. But I haven't tried it in the spring. So there's 2 different thoughts that go through my head. One is, yes, there's shad in Sakakawea, but not a ton. Smelt's obviously the bigger forage base. A rip and wrap looks like a shad. It acts like a shad. So it could be something of that nature. But also jigging wraps, they're much dartier, whereas a ripping wrap flutters and falls a little slower. So I think a ripping wrap is probably better in the spring. That's when a lot of guys use it on Green Bay, Devil's Lake, places like that. So I probably should try that one day in the spring to see how they react to it, just in case. But I just got this package in the mail today.
Uh-oh.
There will be a video with this sucker in the spring, the shadow wrap, because those should have a little more hang time than a jigging wrap, which could make it a great bait in the spring. I got one of my colors in. I ordered my 2 favorite colors, the Perch and the Purple Descent. The purple one, for some reason, is coming later. I don't know. But that's happening. I'm excited about the jigging shadow wrap.
Get a blue one.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't get a blue one. Well, I know why I didn't get a blue one, actually.
Because Nodak angler bought them all.
No, I got a few of them, but because the blue ones are better for deeper water. So I did a video a few weeks ago. I can't remember exactly what it was called. I think it was like dialing in spinner rigs or something. And I was talking about colors of things. So blue is seen the furthest down in the water column of all the colors. Red is seen the least. So like red disappears at like 10 foot and yellow at like 15. Green goes down to like 50 and blue goes down to, whatever. So those cooler colors, the blues, purples, greens, you can see really well in deep water. So anytime you're fishing more than 30 feet of water, and sometimes we're fishing 50 feet of water in the middle of September, that's just where the fish are, especially if it's calm. It's catch and release only if you're doing that, but sometimes you have to do it. Blue is definitely the way to go, if not purple, because they can see it down there.
Well, I've ordered a few of those shadow wraps too, and I'm excited. That guy, first time I saw a video on him, Target Walleye, that Brett McComas, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Like his stuff too, a lot. And he did maybe it was the Linders. I don't remember. Maybe both of them did it. Anyway, they did a jigging shadow wrap deal and smashed them pretty heavy. But I think if they're not real chasey, that would have been something that it's just another thing to try. They're always fish are going to eat something. And, if you've snapped your jigging wrap like we did for 2 days, 10 million times with limited success, I'm just disappointed I didn't think of it. Like, try blue.
Yeah.
And hopefully we only had one blue. And hopefully I didn't get bitten off by a pike.
Right. There's a lot of hope there. Hope is not a plan, Crappie.
Pike instead. Pike, northern.
But no, that's another reason why I wanted to get into ripping wrap so much. I'd love to make them work because plenty of my clients do think the jigging wrap thing is intriguing, and a lot of people have a lot of fun doing it, but they get tired. It's very tiring to do that for 6 hours. So a ripping wrap would be a lot easier to work. I think the jigging shadow wraps would have the same effect. It's only a 5/8 ounce instead of a 9 and 7/8 or whatever they are. 7/8, I think, is the number 9 jigging wrap. So it should be a little less of a shoulder buster, which would be a good thing.
There are 2 video ideas. You can, within like not months apart, but just days apart, when the water's cold, do a shadow wrap and do a ripping wrap. See which one works better. Maybe you surprise yourself. Who knows?
I might. I think that's going to be the plan, though, for sure. I don't know why I wouldn't do that.
Well, you're out there enough, especially I would think if you're out there in the spring and you got a jig and a minnow on and they are just annihilating it's fish after fish, that would be the perfect time to try one of those baits on a day where it's hot, just so you can see, in a good bite whether they work.
But that's the hardest time to do it too, right? Because when you are hammering on something, why do you switch, right?
Right.
So, but for the purposes of making a video, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But it's hard to point, once you're hammering fish, it's like, oh, I'm just going to keep trying to catch more fish or try to get a bigger fish, and that'll make the video. But no, I got to do that. And that's the time to do it. Like you said, if you're going to experiment with something and try to build confidence in something, you want to make sure the fish are biting really well that day.
Right.
So that you have a better shot at getting that accomplished.
At the very least, maybe you could hook up on some nice goldeyes.
I heard from somebody you won a goldeye tournament actually on Sakakawea once.
So yeah, when I was like 8 years old, I had my folks haul me over. There was just a fishing tournament for kids in Fort Stevenson, right at the marina there.
Yeah.
And I used to fish off the dock goldeyes and use them for bait for northerns, Hansted northerns, a whole goldeye. Anyway, all I did was took a bucket of minnows down there, bobber, 2 feet of line, pitch it out, goldeye, bam, bam, bam. On a rubber raft, all kinds of stuff. But flashy bait like a ripping wrap, maybe that will call them in. Brrr, boom, goldeye. Maybe you'll get a 2-pounder.
I think you could catch a goldeye on about anything, first of all. as long as they're around. I can't think of a bait that I've used that I've not caught a goldeye on.
So back in the day, back in the 70s and early 80s, when I was on Sakakawea, goldeyes were thick everywhere. You caught them a lot. Is it still that way? Have the game fish depleted them at all? I mean, what's the deal? Do you catch one every day?
No, not anymore. I don't think they're as thick as they sounded like they were when you were around. If you get into a pack of them, they get to be annoying and they get in your way and you'll catch a bunch in a hurry. But I can go a week or two without catching one pretty easily. So sounds like it's changed. And I don't know if there's a reason for that. I don't know if the Game and Fish has done anything about it. But it sounds like it's different.
Well, maybe the predator, maybe they had a couple bad hatches or something and whatever. I don't know. The thing you need to do is you need to fish, because it's illegal to buy big bait. You can catch big bait and use it. Is that true? Big minnows, you can catch them and use them if you catch them yourself. Is that true?
Yeah, because you can catch creek chubs in the state. You can't carry them across state lines, for one thing.
Right. Because you made a creek chub video.
Right.
That guy must have caught those creek chubs, because you've told me that you cannot buy them.
Well, there are places that will sell creek chubs. They're just usually hard to find because lately people have had a hard time getting them to begin with because the water levels have been down, the creeks haven't been as full, and then the few places that do have them usually sell out really fast. So you can sell creek chubs, you can sell fathead minnows, but you can't sell like shiners and suckers and all that kind of stuff in North Dakota. So
that would be a cool video idea. You should go catch your own creek chubs one day.
Yeah, after we did the creek chub video, Randy and I started thinking about that. Like, we should go do a catch our bait, then catch our fish kind of video.
Awesome.
I'll have to figure out how to catch a creek chub. I think I have some idea, but I've never done it. But no, that would be cool. And if we get a bunch of runoff this spring, there could be more water. It might, I don't know. It could be easier to do. I
don't know. I guess if I was going to go catch creek chubs, guy told me at a tournament one time, fish eat fish. Remember that. Creek chub's a fish. So take a minnow head on a small hook, wait. If there's creek chubs in the area, throw it out and reel it in slow. Maybe you'll catch one. I don't know.
My brother used to do turtle trapping, so he would catch creek chubs. So he caught carp as cut bait for the turtles, but I think aside from that, he caught creek chubs to catch catfish. I don't know. He used to catch creek chubs where I grew up near my hometown, and I think he just used night crawlers, if I remember right. So I'm sure night crawlers would work. I'm sure probably any kind of wax worm would probably work. A piece of a minnow head would probably work. I think the bigger thing is finding them.
I don't know. Anyway, you need to try that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Good idea.
I agree with that.
Because in Minnesota, we rig a lot of big minnows, and it works for especially the larger fish a lot of the time. So I like doing it. Yeah. Not real live scopey, but
sure.
Sometimes we'll take like a 3-foot leader. It's hard. We don't use the giant creek chubs because you toss them very far, slapping on the water. They're dead. But we'll use like smaller red tails, 4-inch red tails, and cast at them. Yeah, it works. It's fun. Just another technique. They got to eat something.
Yeah.
So, do you ever use? I never see you use leeches.
I've brought them a few times just to try, and I've caught fish on leeches, but honestly, there aren't a ton of leeches in the lake, so it doesn't. I mean, they work, but I don't think they're necessary. As opposed to like a Devil's Lake or something, there are certainly places where a leech will outfish everything else, hands down, certain days. People, I don't know. I've heard people winning some tournaments by fishing leeches and jigging wraps on Sakakawea before in the Van Hook arm and stuff like that. I just don't think they're necessary on a day-to-day basis, but they work.
Well, I guess going with what works when you're running a business and buying
Right.
bait and trying to make a living at your
Yeah.
gig, the more to buy a whole bunch of leeches, find out they don't work, and have to toss them in the garbage,
Yeah.
waste of money. And bait, minnows, a dozen shiners in Minnesota is like $20.
Right.
They're about $1.50 at least a piece. So
Mhm.
conserving, making good use of your bait is smart.
Exactly. And the other thing too is the smallmouth bass absolutely love those things. So it kind of ups your smallmouth bass catches, I think, a lot of times as well, which could, if the smallmouth go crazy, if you're targeting walleyes, it could be a little harder to catch the walleyes. But Lon had a question. Do you have experience with rip and glide? Do you know what a rip and glide is? I feel like I should know what that is.
Uh, Lon, send a picture if you can. Um, Maybe it's a Canadian bait or something there.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Unless he's talking about the hyperglide or something, the Acme hyperglide, but we probably
Hyperglides work. Hyperglides work. I use those on perch, just toying around with it. I've used hyper rattles. Um, we've had Actually, we do have a walleye lake that's like 3 hours away, made by Walleye Nation Creations. That must be Walleye Nation's version of the jigging wrap.
I would assume, yeah. And
That's one
that's the
thing
case.
that I like Walleye Nation Creations, those death jigs. Those are used heavy, heavy on the Columbia. And I've watched some fishing tournaments. I don't know if anybody ever used to watch H2H, Isaac Lockett. Some of those guys use, what's the bait? My mind was going 4 different
Rip
ways.
and glide.
No, not the rip and
Oh,
glide, but the death jig. Walleye
oh yeah.
Nation Creations makes a death jig. It's like a jig with a bent hook, slow deathy hook, plus a stinger hook. You can like put a long night crawler on it. And on the Columbia, those are killer. I am ready for the AIM Walleye Series, Dave. That is my partner for Leech Lake. Dave, I am ready.
There you go.
And in more ways than one, there's gonna be some bloods. We're gonna hand out a box of Kleenexes to a bunch of people at the weigh-in on that one, Dave.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right too. I'm sure we'll get slaughtered, but everybody's fished there 500 times. But I've studied, I've had the maps out for months, just looking at stuff, watched every Leech Lake video ever made, and I'm so excited for that. Can you feel it? Can you feel it coming through the screen?
I can feel it.
You can feel it.
Before I ever learned about Sakakawea, Leech Lake was kind of a mythical thing for me, and I thought it was a pretty cool deal. I still like Leech Lake. I did ice fish it this year. That was less than fruitful. It was tough, but it's a cool lake. It's a cool place. Although we should probably talk a little bit about Sakakawea. I did throw that in the title. I did promise that. So if
We
anybody
kind
has
of
any
a little
questions with
bit.
that,
Let's
huh?
do it. We
Okay.
kind of did a little bit, but I'm good with that. That's where I grew up there,
Exactly. So specifically, I wanted to give just like an update on the spring season. So if anybody has any questions about what the conditions are like up there, throw a question up there. But obviously, like we said, it's still covered in ice. It's still covered in snow. It's probably going to be a while. It might even be May before it's open water. But the other thing is the water levels are down. So the Corps of Engineers pumped the water down. So we got that big kick up from the Yellowstone flood last year. A lot of that was pumped out to try to equalize all the reservoirs. So we're back down to 1824 above sea level, which is 26 feet below full pool. Last year we started at 1828. So we're 4 feet less than we were last spring. That's probably going to be where it starts this spring. Given the snowpack and the runoff and all that kind of stuff, though, the forecast is get at least up to 1832 by July. So early season, there's going to be some more ramp challenges like there were last year. Like the Deepwater Bay North ramp, for example, was just barely usable at the beginning of last year. It's not going to be usable at the beginning of this year. So ramps are going to be a little more limited. We're still going to be able to get on the lake. There's still places you can do it, but it's going to be a different place to start with. And but it should come back up by the time we get into the meat of the season. So spring's going to be a little interesting, but it's going to be fishable. I'm not super concerned about what it's going to do in the long term because I don't think the levels are going to stay there that long. Talk about the spring.
Henstead's got a question for you.
Yeah, speaking of spring,
Newtown. The only thing I ever caught back in the day, one guy invited me to go fishing to Newtown with him one time, and all we caught was your favorite fish.
The goldeye?
Goldeyes, like 100 of them. And he wouldn't move, but I was like 10 years old and I wasn't about to say, hey, man, it ain't happening here. Let's go. But anyway, please comment to Mr. Hanstead.
Yeah, so there's an old school theory that I still kind of share, and there's also a little bit of updated information that makes me slightly rethink this, but nevertheless, so typically when you get done with the spawn, you got about a couple of weeks while the fish are just kind of not into it, and then the bite starts to pick up, and the bite always starts to pick up way on the further western edges of the lake west of Newtown. One reason for sure is the fact that the water is shallower there and it warms up quicker. So warmer water is going to get the bite going too, but there's also this idea, and for sure there are some fish that do a big migration to spawn. So a lot of fish migrate way up into the upper reaches of the river by the confluence and stuff, by the Yellowstone, do their spawning and then start working their way back down to certain areas. Well, the Game and Fish also did a study that they just published like a few months ago or end of last fall or something like that, saying that based on their study, they don't think the fish actually move as far as they thought they did, that most fish only move maybe 10 to 20 miles from their spawning locations. So is there really this big migration, or is it just because there's fish everywhere, but the water warms up there quicker, so they get more active quicker? Is it a little bit of both? I don't know. But the point being, the first bite that starts post-spawn is always west of Newtown. That's the first place you can get on fish, usually on a hot bite. And then it starts to work its way down everywhere else. Whether they're migrating or it's just the water temperature, does it matter? I don't know. As long as you know where to go to catch fish, that's the important thing. So
possibly Mr. Hanstead should employ the services of Bloemendaal Guide Service to go on a fish catching mission in the Newtown area.
Be glad to take him again.
Wish I could go.
Yeah.
But
so the one thing that made me curious about the study is just the fact that, like, so when you tag fish, obviously, if somebody reports a tag, that means they caught the fish and they either just wrote the tag number down or they kept the fish and reported the tag number. So I think there's a little bit potentially of survivorship bias in this study, just because if people catch all of these fish before they continue migrating, if they migrate, then they can't migrate anymore, right? So maybe that fish would have gone 80, 100 miles downstream, but it didn't have the opportunity to. So to me, I don't know. I still have some questions in there. There's definitely some fish, and they even acknowledge that in the study, that some fish they tag do wind up 100 miles downriver from where they tagged them. So that does happen. And I've caught fish that were tagged in white earth that I caught down by Deepwater Bay. So that's at least, I don't know, 30, 40 miles, if not more. So I don't know. Point being, does it matter? Are they migrating? Is the bite just better? I don't know. But if you want to get on the earliest action, it's usually west. That's where it starts.
A lot of that seems far out to me. Like I've seen a lot of the verbiage about migrating fish on Sakakawea. And to me, when I think about a fish like a walleye, why do they need to go that far in my brain? I'm not totally, because I don't get to fish Sakakawea like hardly ever. I don't like and I've never studied it, but it just seems to me like there's so much area in that lake that seems suitable for spawning. Why would a fish
Sure.
go that far? I mean, why burn all that energy
So I
against current?
Yeah, so one thing they do, there's been other studies that say that walleyes like to go wherever they were born is where they like to go back and spawn, and once they pick a spawning spot,
Salmon.
they keep going back. So they could have just been one of those situations where obviously rivers have current and walleyes need the current for spawning. So wind movement and wave movement can help too, but current's probably a little better. So if for whatever reason they started up in the river and then in their search of food they wandered 80 miles down the reservoir, then next spring they're like, oh, they're just going to go back up there to spawn again. So that's a possibility. But also there was another study that the South Dakota Game and Fish did on Lake Oahe, which is just another reservoir one step south of Sakakawea, that said they found that there's basically three kinds of fish. There's the lake fish, which spawn in the lake and live in the lake. And then there's the river fish, spawn in the river, live in the river. And then there's the river run fish that spawn up in the river and then come back to the lake to spend the summer and feed. So how far they actually go is the question. How many of the fish are in this river run population is another question. So is it 20% of the fish? Is it 80? Somewhere in the middle? And do they go 20 miles? Do they go 120 miles? Not entirely sure, but
Weird deal. I don't get it. But
it's
that's
fascinating.
I mean, obviously that whole system works because it's a factory.
Yeah,
Um, it's shocking. I watched so many things about Devil's Lake too. That's another place. I went ice fishing there one time in college. I
sure.
was at the University of North Dakota. Somebody knew somebody had an ice house on Devil's Lake. We went, caught some big perch, or what were big perch to me at the time.
Yep.
Um, but I watched your videos on Devil's Lake. I watched Tom Boley's videos, Devil's Lake, everybody's NWT stuff. I mean, that place is loaded.
Sure.
I mean,
I think the big thing for Devil's Lake is because it's a flooded body of, so for people that don't know much about Devil's Lake, it fluctuates a ton. It doesn't have a lot of natural outlet for the water till it reaches a certain point. It dumps into what's called the Cheyenne River, but it's made up of so much flooded like farmland and stuff, so it's just so fertile. So there's so much life in that system that just absolutely explodes all the fish species in it. And especially when you're in a cycle where the water levels are rising, which they're in again. It was up last year, and now this year I think it's going to go higher because of all the local runoff.
yeah.
The spawns are just going to be out of control, and it's going to be another big, massive year class of fish and all kinds of stuff. So that, I think that's what drives that fishery to me, and why it's always so incredible, even though it's not a reservoir or a river system.
I think it'd be fun to go there. I mean, many of the
Fun place.
videos I watch coming out of Devil's Lake, everybody's fishing shallow. You were fishing shallow, flat thing, whatever. But I've watched some videos, be it NWT or whatever, where guys are out deep and they're catching a ton of fish on jigging wraps, and there's so many fish in there. Watched a video one time where a guy smoked them on ripping wraps there. There's
Mhm.
your another, yeah, the northern assault. That's Hansted. They
Yeah. Devil's Lake is going to have another big pike spawn last year and this year too, so they're going to be loaded with hammer handles next year.
He told me one time, he says, if I cooked a northern and a walleye side by side, you'd never know the difference.
If you bread it and fry it, no.
I'd still be able to tell the difference.
Yeah,
I'm not northern.
you can tell a subtle little difference. I can, but it's pretty close. They're so good. I like them. But
What else you got, Bloom?
I think we're probably going to have to end it. We're at 1:05 right now. I think it's probably time to get off. It's been great chatting with you.
It's been an hour?
It's been an hour. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of felt like I was just getting rolling.
I know. I feel like I could talk with you all day, but at some point we're going to have to pull the plug. It's just
Like
the way it is.
some intelligent person said, all good things must come to an end.
All good things come to an end. Yeah. So
how many people there must have been? I don't know, a dozen people. Whoever commented, there's a high chance of them getting pulled out of the hat
there is a high chance.
after you get waxed on that tournament.
Well, I mean, they're going to get their name out of the hat, but they're not going to get it because I got waxed. It's going to be because you got waxed. In which case,
I think you should provide lunch too.
just keep up in the ante, why don't you? And
maybe fill your bowl, your little green lunch bowl that you're eating out of all the time, extra full of rice and tuna.
it's funny that thing's actually become known as like an artifact of the videos now.
No, it's forever there.
I have the same little green Tupperware bowl.
That's what we should throw in there. After I beat you, I get the green bowl.
I don't know about that.
You can call it the Green Bowl Cup.
Ooh.
Kind of like the Stanley Cup in hockey. The Green Bowl.
It's kind of like my comfort blanket, though, man. That's like my thing.
Okay, Linus. Okay, Linus.
Oh God.
Who did most of the talking? I think Bloom.
When is this going to happen?
When is it going to happen? It is going to happen for
Sounds
sure
like
in October. And if it can happen sooner, if I can get there, then it'll be updated during your videos. You'll give little,
Yeah.
I'll send you little, I think this is going to be the case. And then you can throw it out so people can start getting keyed up.
Yep. And obviously there'll be a video on it. So if at whatever point you see a Crappie T versus Bloemendaal fishing rematch, that's the video you want to watch.
It's going to be heavy.
It's going to be very heavy. And I think that's a good note to end it on.
Thanks for watching, everybody. All my friends in North Dakota, shovel hard, wear your gloves. Crappie T.
Peace. Later, guys.
Peace out.